Um, and just, you're all unmuted because we don't have that many people. So feel free to speak. When you speak, your video will appear on everyone else's screen. When you have ended speaking, um, when you're speaking, you will not see yourself on the main screen. You will see the last person who talked, but the rest of us are seeing you, just so that you kind of have an idea of how this operates. All right, so it's an open meeting.
Yes, it's all getting a bit scary, isn't it, with this coronavirus?
Yes, it is.
There's quite a number of cases in New York now, isn't there?
I believe, I can't remember, these things sort of fly by. I have heard this morning, I think that they have 15,000 cases in New York City, but I could have it totally wrong. But yeah, I mean, it's been for the last 2 weeks, they've been saying we're all so used to that it's going to be exponential, and the exponential part of it is going to go for 6 to 8 weeks in all likelihood. So
The other thing,
go ahead, Camille.
well, they say that's 5% of the world cases in New York City. But really, the thing that's happening in the United States is that we don't have any testing kits. So the numbers you're seeing are completely false. I would say they're easily double what we have, and it's intentional because our president just doesn't want to look bad, and he's afraid of the economy crashing. So they're actually withholding test kits. You just can't get them. Even people on the front lines, doctors and nurses who have been treating COVID patients, can't be tested. So it's hard to say really what the numbers are here. I did see an article when I woke up in the middle of the night that they were calling the National Guard out, which is a really substantial step. It means basically that it's just a step below the military. But then when I woke up this morning, that article had disappeared. So I don't know what's happening down there out in the world.
They, according to NPR, which is our quote unquote BBC, if you like, it's not a government radio, but it's National Public Radio. They have approved National Guard for both New York and California, and they're claiming, we'll see, that the National Guard does not have a very good reputation, because they often, when they're used in civil situations, it's usually to control riots, and nobody likes them. Oh, well, at least I don't like them. I should speak for myself. But they're claiming, oh no, this is just to release resources from the state governments. And a National Guard is under the control of the state governor. It is not under the control of the federal government. So since both New York and California are Democratic governors, they have the ability to say, get the fuck out. So, yeah, it's definitely not a good sign when the National Guard comes in. But I'm assuming that it's everywhere very much the same. In the last week, we have, say in the last 10 days, streets have been emptying slowly, maybe, but we're definitely in another world than we were,
sure.
2 weeks ago. And we're not seeing that it will change in a short term. And of course, we're all scared as to what will happen in the next 18 months. And I guess just like Trump, but in a slightly different way, we're all worried about the economy and what will happen. And I think that's universal. I don't think there's anywhere in the world that people don't feel the same. And yes, we are, I have a patient who's been exposed to someone who is claimed to have COVID. Her coworker went with a high fever to the emergency room with with symptoms, and they said, okay, assume you have COVID, because they did a strep throat, and they did they did a number of tests, cultured other things, and they said you don't have these, so therefore assume you have corona. And because here the epidemic, I'm in New Hampshire, which is somewhat rural, and we don't have so many people, so we're still at only 60 cases. um, but so of course my patient was extremely distraught over this thing, and because she had just had contact with her. And but she said, I know this woman lives in Stafford County and the count is still 0 and it's still a week later. And so she said, they're telling people they have COVID-19, but those people assume that, but those people are not on the official statistics. The official statistics, because this happens to be a quote unquote scientific experiment, we can see it because this county still has 0 patients, but this woman lives in Stafford County, the one who's being told, assume, we're classifying you as COVID-19, just go home and isolate. So clearly there's weird numbers going on, and yes, Trump has clearly said, I think everybody's seen it, I don't want my numbers to look bad.
Yeah.
So it's very
No, he
sad.
says it point blank. He says it point blank.
Oh no, he did, yeah, on television.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
we're,
I don't. Oh, I'm sorry. Go
yes,
ahead, Audrey.
please. No, go ahead.
I
Come
thought
in.
you paused. I don't remember if this happened in the last week, but did I mention that one of my former students has been treating 2 cases that I consulted on, and so I got some insights from that
Oh, yes.
as to the presentation.
Okay, that will be very nice. Let me just
Okay.
welcome, if you wait 1 second, I'll just
Yes,
wanted to
of course.
welcome in Allison.
Okay.
Hi,
Oh, we have
Allison.
lots of new people.
Hi.
That's great.
Yes, it's a whole new, it's a new world. It's a brave new COVID world.
Lovely.
So go ahead, Camille.
Well, it was a very classic Shan Han Lung presentation. And I think some of it's been publicized, but some of it was very interesting to me. It was a 29-year-old ski instructor and his girlfriend. So they were both very young, very athletic. And in terms of Shan Han Lung, it was alternating fever and chills, so Xiao Yang. And when it was a fever, it did go very high. And there was, the sore throat and all of that. So there were certainly some yang and sweating at night. So there were some Yang Ming presentations, but also for both of them, there was a lot of vomiting and diarrhea, a very explosive diarrhea, which is something that hasn't been as publicized in the, in the information we've gotten online. So and there was a lot of weakness. They felt weakness in the back and knees, which went all the way into Xiao Yin cold. So you were seeing it straddle 3 different levels of the Shan Han Lung: Yang Ming, Xiao Yang, and Xiao Yin cold type. And so it really and then after a certain point, then he, who was far more advanced than she, started seeing a lot of red and purple welts on their body, on his body. So you were definitely seeing, a deep heat as well. Like actually, Shui Yin too. So I actually 4 different levels. So it really inspired me to go out and buy a bunch more herbs. I'm not treating in the clinic, and I'm not expecting, but I, certainly want to have it for myself or for, immediate friends and family, that kind of thing. So I did. And another article that I saw in the paper, or online rather. Funny, I said paper, but another article I saw online. A respiratory therapist went into a lot of detail about things and mentioned frothy pink lung secretions because there was a lot of bleeding in the lungs. So I got some stop bleeding herbs as well.
Thank you. The gastrointestinal is actually an official sign. They say about 10 to 12% of people do start with gastrointestinal signs. So that's not typical because it is a respiratory virus, but the gastrointestinal is considered a possibility, a warning sign. So basically, you're describing five of six possibilities in the shaman one.
Well, was it 5
Yeah,
or
because you
4?
said, well, yeah,
Okay.
I think the only
Anyway,
one you missed was Taiyin. You said Shaoyin cold, and Jueyin because of the rashes, and then
yeah,
you had both Taiyin, Yangming, and well, there had to have been Taiyin. It's Taiyang, sorry, at some stage, but you
at some
definitely
point.
yeah
At some point.
you
Yeah.
had the Yangming. Yeah, so I guess I added one for you just for the sake
Oh,
of
thank
it.
you. Thank you.
I
You're
mean,
so
why not?
generous. So, yeah, yeah, but it was very, very helpful to get the additional herbs. And then of course, this respiratory therapist actually mentioned how people were literally, they were showing signs as though they had been drowning. They were so drowned in their own secretions, and the imaging of their lungs, everything was completely white. There was no space for air whatsoever, and that people were taking their own tubes out because they felt like they were drowning.
Yeah, thank you. So in just a little bit of a practical question. So your student who's treating this ski instructor and girlfriend, I'm wondering what they have done and whether that's been helpful. Because part of the problem for me is, you have all these people, this weekend there was this big seminar with John Chen, and and we're all like given these formulas that have been around for over a month now. In fact, Camille, you've emailed it to us before. And I'm sort of wondering, like, how much of this is actual clinical experience and how much of it is theoretical. So, since you have someone who's actually treated and can give us some, okay, this is, it may be very early, but this is helpful, this is not so helpful.
Well,
Do you
it
have
is
any knowledge?
early. It is early, and the only thing that I have heard so far, and I can check in with her again and report back, but what I have heard so far is that that a lot of the tightness in his chest is going away, and that he's breathing a lot better.
Mhm.
And that's all I have heard so far.
And do you know what she gave him?
Oh yes, because I wrote the formula. that was why my student contacted me.
Okay, so stop writing and start talking.
Okay, well, okay, so she didn't have Chai Hu Tang, she didn't have the Ban Sha and Huang Qing, so we just went with Chai Hu as a representative of pushing out of the Xiaoyang. And then we added in the Bai Hu Tang for the Yang Ming, so she did Shugao and Jamu. And then we added in an assortment of antiviral herbs that whatever she had on hand. I was recommending Baiwasa Sasao and Zihua Di Ding. I think she had those. Zha Qingye, Ban Langan. And then for I have it written out. I can email it. But then for the vomiting and diarrhea, we went with Huoshang and Peilan. And then for the tightness in the chest, Bai Xiao Jie Gong. So I think that was the gist of it. And again, I can email it to you, Avi, and you can send it to the new people.
All right, I will try. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyone else? And Allison, you're on mute right now, it appears. So if you want to talk, just unmute yourself. Do you know how to do that, or do you want me to unmute you? You were you unvideoed yourself, which is fine. Oh, okay, you're not on mute anymore. Okay, you're good. Anyone else with any sharings, questions, venting, whatever? This is not our kind of standard process perhaps, but this is what is more useful perhaps in this era.
So are you all in the US?
No, two of us are in Ireland. Mary Jo and Teresa are in Ireland. You are from?
I'm from the UK,
You're from the UK.
south of England.
And same here.
Oh, and
In fact,
Alison.
Alison and I know each other very well.
Oh, okay,
So,
cool. So, and Camille and I know each other very well, and Camille and I are both from the US.
I'm in California and Avi is in New Hampshire.
Right. So we're kind of in the same country, but in totally opposite ends. It's a little bit like if I was in Moscow and she was in Madrid. So, something like that. So,
I'm glad you're in Moscow.
yeah, well, I am in a much colder environment. I'm in an area that's called New England. And sometimes in the winters, I call it New Siberia. Because it is extremely cold here in the winters at times. So, so I'm wondering, yeah, please.
So, with regard to acupuncture treatment, what would you, immune points, I presume, and
Okay, I have to say I am hesitant. I mean, we did something like that last week, I think, or something. I can give you theory of what I personally might consider, but I have not seen someone that clearly is diagnosed with COVID, and I'm obviously not seeing people right now, so I have no real clinical experience. Theoretically, and so here's the theoretical for me, and of course, you have to be very careful because needling people, like, do you really want to needle people at this point?
No, I'm more talking even ourselves.
Ourselves. Okay, so this is what I do for myself. Okay, and just so that you know, I have never diagnosed myself ever. Okay, because I can't palpate my abdomen because my diagnoses too are palpatory by nature. So this is what I do. This is my own protocol for what I do is I do the immune points between large intestine 10 and 11, and I do direct moxa. And I know I tell people I don't like stomach 36, blah, blah, blah. I never used it since school, but since everybody says moxa stomach 36, I go, fuck it. But I do direct moxa on stomach 36. That's definitely not
I'm shocked.
I am shocked too. It's a point of pride for me that large intestine 4 and stomach 36 do not exist in my vocabulary, but I guess after 30 years, I'm allowed to just go for it, because people talk about it so strongly, as like it's like, okay, fine, just in case. So that's in terms of acupuncture, primarily in terms of what I do is, and moxa. And I haven't yet, but I will probably start doing kidney 6, either as moxa or as a needle towards the Achilles. And the reason why is kidney 6 is part of the immune protocol. And it's considered a sodium exchange point. Its name is Jiao Hai. Hai meaning ocean. Ocean, it's not a body of water. An ocean means it has salt in it. It has minerals in it. So, for example, we have what we call a mineral treatment. Kidney 6, Jiao Hai, spleen 10, Shui Hai, ring 6, Qi Hai, and then heart 3, Xiao and Xiao Hai, which is small intestine 8 and heart 3. This is a mineral treatment. This is for people who have mineral imbalance. But since, for example, if you go on Heiner's website and he recommends minerals to put some, basically, even though he recommends a very expensive product, basically it's putting salt in your water as a way of, that minerals are important for your immune system. Then kidney 6 is always, in the Nagano style, being something that we use for immune issues. And of course, it's a famous point for throat by TCM, not so much for me personally. But one of the signs and symptoms is sore throat and dry cough. That is, they were not emphasizing that at the beginning, but they're very clearly, when you look at the signs that they're claiming, if you have these signs, go, you should check it out, which of course, where we are, it's useless. Check out what? But nonetheless, And then in terms of my own practice, so you will see a whole bunch of things coming from different sources of physical exercises that, first of all, so for me personally, I'm a quote unquote advanced yogi. I don't know if I like that term, but you know, I'm one of those people who spends on a regular basis a fair amount of time with my leg behind my head and doing weird things on my hands and stuff like that. So I have to translate it for other people. I would say that something like downward dog, because it opens, if you push your hands into the ground and you pull the shoulder blades away, so you're creating a like the chwai in the arm, if you like. It's very important to open the lymph. Okay, and inversions are very important, and you know, because they really kind of activate the lungs. And I do a lot of pranayama, you know, in general. So taking in as long a breath as you can. I take in a breath for 10 count and then hold it for 30, the in breath for 30 seconds, then breathe out for 10 seconds and hold that out breath for 25 seconds. That's very extreme. Okay, but any method of activating the lungs, I think, is useful. You know, kind of quote unquote the pushing out effect and physical, you know, making, you know, I suggest to people, people call and they say, oh, I have anxiety, depression, whatever. Physical exercise, because not everybody can do yoga, and not and not everybody's yoga is necessarily gonna get sweat out of, you know, there's much more yin style yogas. So I'm recommending to people, you know, if you can go out and jog or bicycle, or, you know, one woman said, I can kickbox. So no, I mean, I would have a little dummy of Trump and kickbox that, no problem. So, so there's lots of options there, but I think some physical activity is very useful. You know, because otherwise, what I guess the TCM ideology is the chi stagnates, and we don't, you know, it's really important to ply out the lung tissue constantly as much as we can before we get into a situation of shortness of breath. Now, in terms of theoretically, should at some point we would be invited to participate in some sort of care for people with gloves and masks and whatever, then the points that actually open the lungs are lung 4, but I take it about 3 tsun above lung 5. You'll find a little dip at the edge of the bicep, and that's a point that facilitates breathing. Lung 8 does to some extent, and lung 5, of course, also. But the other thing is very useful if one can, moxa, and that you can also do as prevention, but you can't do it on yourself because I can't reach. Moxa, bladder 42, 43, 44 area. People who have weakness in the lungs, that the lungs are not moving, you start getting this, not adhesions, but thickening of the tissue at the on the rhomboids in general, but especially on the attachments of the rhomboids to the inner border of the scapula. So you want to start dissolving it. Unfortunately, when I say moxa, I mean direct moxa. So if you can do it, because I know not everybody does direct moxa, because I come from a Japanese way of doing things primarily, then you can take a newspaper and fold it 4 or 5 times if there are still newspapers, you know, because we haven't had newspapers for years now. And you take the moxipul and you put the newspaper on the skin, and you tap the pull on the newspaper that is on the skin, and you tap boom 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 boom, and they get heat and they get almost like a mosquito bite. It's a similar feeling to direct moxa of like whoops. And the newspaper does not burn. It will turn black, but it won't burn. It's not like you're going to set anything. That's generally more effective than doing you know, the cigar moxa, of which I don't really have a huge experience with pole moxa, so I can't speak for it. So that's kind of like my major protocols. I think that ensuring the legs are being plied out of the hip socket to, well, that sounded horrible. Stretching, stretching the quad so that the limb, what happens is I see a lot of stuff coming from the yoga world where they talk a lot about inversions and all upper. But if you don't get the legs, if you don't get the lymph nodes in the thighs activated, you're not going to get a lot of, then all the stuff up here is, yeah, you're moving it, but you're not, it's not as good in my opinion. And also, doing side bends of whatever nature to activate the liver and the spleen, because remember, the spleen is a lymph organ, for sure. The liver can be considered a lymph organ. I'm sorry? I thought there was a question. No, okay. But it's really important to squeeze in and out the liver and the spleen. That's why I'm suggesting sideburns. That's pretty much it, and it's all really theoretical. So I wish I could say, oh yes, I've got this great protocol. I'm running for the Nobel Prize in Medicine next year. That's definitely not what's happening for me. So.
And how about the food, like options for what we should be eating and how we should be looking after ourselves with food options? Is that something that we can have a chat about?
Sure. Do you have any ideas or any?
No, I'm I'm a recently graduated student,
Right.
and so
Doesn't mean anything.
I'm just thinking that if this is something that's really, they're thinking that it's along the lines of damp, and I'm obviously thinking about sort of heat sources of food and things that we can use to kind of burn out the damp, so to speak. But I'm not really sure about that, but would be grateful for any suggestions.
So I would say personally, it depends on what stage you're I mean, I think that for us to take care of ourselves, I would say that we should be careful about because we're now hoarding foods, obviously, and we're hoarding things that are going to keep long. But the produce sections are totally full still, or relatively full. So just to be careful about the tendency to go for starchy and sweet foods that basically will deplete your immune system and encourage inflammation. So these cytokine storms can, you don't have them today because you don't know you have COVID, but when you do, if you've eaten sugar, a lot, or starch for a lot, you're kind of encouraging the process later on, perhaps. I can't say for sure, but so I would say that, and really try and eat, dark leafy greens as much as you can, maybe root vegetables, things like that. But to recognize that we're, if we can only go to the store once a week because nobody wants to go out and buy stuff all the time, right? It's an exposure, and it's not good for the public, not good for us. So do what we can with actual food and not fill it up with other things as much as we can. And in terms of, clove, ginger, these are things. Garlic is, I don't know how much antiviral garlic is, but it's certainly antimicrobial, in terms of other infections. And garlic does open the chest.
Yeah.
And scallions do as well. They're less antimicrobial. Certainly drinking peppermint tea can be helpful to, just keeping the lungs in as good condition in advance. And once I don't think that peppermint is a good enough herb for once you actually, the lungs are congested, etc. Then you need like major. By the way, one herb that's not mentioned a lot, but I have seen that it is it is that, I don't know how they determine that, but they're claiming that it is effective against the virus, is Yuxingzao, which is quite disgustingly bitter and has a horrible, that's why it's called fishy smell herb, Yuxingzao. It's not a food though.
Very drying.
Yeah, but it's extraordinarily it's
Yeah.
used for both lung issues and dysentery issues. And it is very effective for lung. That's one of my go-to things that I give people when, in cases of lung issues when they ask for herbs. And it is quite effective. So that might be something that's worth, I don't know, stocking up on. I'm just trying to think of more foods. Um,
Can I add in
yes,
mustard?
yes, I was going to ask. Oh,
Because
mustard.
mustard,
Yes.
because not only taken orally, it'll help break up the phlegm, but also mustard plasters on the chest can be very helpful if you have enough of it.
Yeah. Although would you suggest mustard, right, for someone who's not affected yet, or because it sounds
No,
a
no,
little
no,
bit like
no.
you
I'm talking about moving the pneumonia, like there,
got you. Fair enough. Yes.
particularly, when it gets into the lower lungs and it's
Yes.
really stubborn and it won't come out, and you get sort of pockets of infection. Sometimes it can help kind of move those pockets to do a localized plaster.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh,
But
and
all
one
the
more.
warming spices, that entire category, because that not only relieves surface and is very dispersing, but it will also help the phlegm.
So Camille, just because we have a bunch of people who are actually from Europe and they often don't study herbs. You may want to talk about it in terms of normal, like the normal names of food,
Oh, well, I mean,
as
just
opposed to
along the
chenpi,
lines of
for
what you had
example.
already said of ginger and clove and allspice, all of those
Cinnamon.
lovely
Yes.
spices that you'd want to put in an apple pie or something like that. But those are all really good. Okay, ginger, allspice, cloves, cinnamon, galanga, if you have access to that. That's in that. There's a whole category of herbs. I don't know, Avi, have I missed any of them? Even the peppers, black pepper, white pepper, the red peppers, those would all fall in that category as well. If I were really desperate to move phlegm and relieve surface, I'd even include, the really hot, spicy red peppers.
And you can, if I may, you can also start with like the Italian style herbs. They also have a certain amount of that. They're not as strong. So, the not so spicy, like the thymes and the oregons, which are extraordinarily antimicrobial. And
Absolutely.
certainly as an essential oil, then
Yeah.
they become really like so one other thing I do, sorry, I forgot to mention, I snort. No, because I don't like neti pots. I don't think they get in as much. I literally, because they also say that, the virus attacks the nasopharyngeal, laryngeal area first. That's its main place. That's the tissue that it likes the most at the beginning. So I want to make sure that my throat and my nose are totally sterilized daily. So I take a glass of water, a quarter teaspoon of salt, and I put a drop of either rosemary or thyme or both. Oregano is fine, and just I happen to snort in and spit out. You do it over the sink, obviously, and then do each nostril a few times. Some people like neti pots where it's a lot smoother. I don't like things going up my nose without me controlling it. Most people like the neti pot, but I like the snorting. Cinnamon is considered definitely one of the, although they're talking about cinnamon leaf, not necessarily the bark, but chances are the bark has some qualities too. The cinnamon is very antiviral and is a good, and it's supposedly a good match in this particular situation. So people can cook with cinnamon. I would definitely say do not get the powder. You're wasting everything except the taste. Get the sticks and use a real stick. Because otherwise everything of any value has been evaporated from the cinnamon
Yeah.
oil by the time it's been powdered in the store. Um, and I was thinking of one more thing and it escaped me. Oh, it's one thing that I do also, but I do this regularly, so it didn't occur to me. I don't, not so much mustard, but horseradish.
Yes, yes, very good.
Yeah, horseradish has a very strong affinity to the lung tissue, and it's quite antimicrobial. I have not heard of any test, anybody saying, well, when I say test, I'm saying people saying, I don't know if they really tested it in the lab. I don't know, nobody has talked about horseradish, but horseradish is really good for lung issues with phlegm and in any infections, and also for bladder issues. It has a clear affinity for both the bladder, the contractibility, whatever, tissue that expands and contracts. In the case of the bladder, that tissue is considered a rugae. That's why the bladder is a Fu organ, just like the stomach has the same kind of tissue. You know, it's tissue that slides over each other. The lungs are not that kind of tissue. It expands and contracts, but the lung is not a rugae. It's a slightly different kind of cell tissue. But horseradish has a very strong affinity for that and is very good for that. So I'm doing a teaspoon every day of horseradish, and there's tons of horseradish in the stores. Well, usually there isn't much anyway because nobody buys it, but I buy the pickled thingy. You know, I don't I don't buy the actual horseradish and grate it, which may be a very good thing because talking about release surface, I don't think, you know, you grate some horseradish and you ain't got no surface left. You're crying like hell. So you're really releasing everything. I have not done that in years, but I am taking horseradish.
Oh, that makes me want to plant some. That's fabulous. So, and also, by the way, drinking tea made from just, if you have some in your garden, oregano and thyme in your garden, just take a handful and brew it as a tea is a lovely thing. And I would also add in getting some essential oils like eucalyptus and the oregano and thyme essential oils as well, and tea tree.
Yeah, and I actually use those for sanitizing.
Mm-hmm.
A number of reasons. First of all, because I have essential oils, they're easy to get. They're at this point still, let's say on Amazon, or at least on my end. Whereas, you know, if I wanted to get bleach or Lysol or something like that, they don't exist in the stores. They're gone. They put cornflakes where they're supposed to be all the cleaning materials. It's become a representative of the breakfast section. Because they don't want the shelves to be empty or something. And what I do is I also diffuse. I have a diffuser, and I just put some eucalyptus, lemon, thyme, oregano, cinnamon leaf, and tea tree are all, according to Heiner, are supposed to be effective. I don't know how he knows. I don't have personal contact with him, so I can't ask. But they are known as antimicrobial. Of course, eucalyptus is extremely good for opening the lungs regardless. So I diffuse the house for about an hour. I put the essential oils in a diffuser. If you don't have a diffuser, you can just put them in a little thing under a candle, under some heat, and you know, so it's better if they're in water because you do what you can. And I just once a day I put a lemon on or something. Lemon is my preferred because it has the easier smell for me, and on a sponge, and I wipe the counters that way. You know, because I don't have anything else to do it with. But I think that it's essential oils are extraordinarily antimicrobial because they're it's the essence of the plant. So it's in a way, it's the protective mechanism of the plant. You know, yes, on the one hand, it should be theoretically the Wei Qi, but the essence of the plant, there is a place where you are totally protected in. That's why, for example, cortisone it's not good for your immune system, but it is the anti-inflammatory situation. That's why we use cortisol so much. It is in some ways, it's equivalent to our essence. It has a strong defend away capacity also. So, those are things that I do.
The
Yeah, go
the
ahead.
citrus oils, by the way, the lemon, orange, grapefruit will also help phlegm quite a lot, and ginger essential oil as well. So those can be very helpful. Our teacher, Jeffrey Yuen, says the essence of the plant treats the essence of the person. And I love that.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I'm not sure how easy it is to get ginger essential oil.
It is here. I don't know about,
Oh, okay. All right. All right.
yeah, I don't know about Europe.
Now, if you are ingesting an essential oil, so that's one thing that I would say, um, be careful about who don't get like the El Cheapo stuff that you get, say, at Boots. I don't, not, no offense to Boots or anything, but um, you want a relatively good quality. So if you're using it just for the air or just for wiping things out, that's one thing. But if you're actually taking it internally, even in washing the nose, I would also recommend. But certainly if you're trying to like drink, you put a drop of essential oil in water and actually drinking it, you really want a really high quality essential oil. How you know is when you open the bottle, if it smells, how you have these mentholated smells? Some lavenders even smell that way when you open them. You can really tell with peppermint. It's very rare to get a really good peppermint. If when you open the bottle, it should smell sweet. Usually they smell like menthol. Mostly it's because of the process of extraction. You get a lot of that, so it's, so they'll tell you, we're extracting it through steam or whatever, but somehow in the process something didn't go right, in my opinion. So there are some companies that I think are good in the States, but I don't know if, so Original Swiss Aromatics is a company that has very good herbs. Young Living and the Terra, is that the offshoot of them? But they're multi-marketing
Yeah.
situations. They do have good herbs though. I'm not saying I don't like the strategy maybe, but Eden's Garden or Eden, something like that, seems to be good essential oils. And I think Plant Therapy, only just gotten one from it, seem to be good quality essential oils. And Camille, do you have other?
Well, again, I don't know what they can get in Europe, but the two that are cited as food grade are the Original Swiss Aromatics and Alchemica Botanica, which is actually started by an acupuncturist who studies with Jeffrey Yuen, and she's in San Francisco. But I
Oh,
don't.
that's Evelyn's. Okay.
Yeah, Evelyn's company, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She does mostly Chinese herbs, though, doesn't she? Chinese
Which is
herbs as
really
essential
lovely.
oils. Okay.
And one thing I wanted to say is that you can also, if you can find it, get essential oil of mugwort, and that you can put on your back, for example. If you can't do the direct moxa, you could rub the essential oil of mugwort in. Yes, well, I think it's really helpful, and possibly putting a heat pad on top of it to enhance the effect. But I mean, it's not as good as doing the moxa, but it's better than not having it at all.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Anyone else needs to or would like to share about themselves? Nothing to do with acupuncture, about life in the unemployment, acupuncturists in the unemployment line.
I haven't thought of any ideas yet, but if I do, I shall let you know next time. I'm still working on it.
No, I meant more how we feel. I didn't mean solutions. There are no solutions yet. We just have to sit, breathe, and the solutions will come later. But sometimes it's useful to just talk to each other, and so you feel like, oh, how I'm feeling, my situation, I'm not alone. There are so many people in this very situation. Everyone feels slightly different and the same. Sometimes it's useful, so that's why I'm asking.
I would guess that it's just that things are moving so quickly that it's quite difficult to digest everything that's going on right now.
Yes.
So for me, you know, I feel like I might be a couple of steps behind in catching up with actually what's happening globally. You know, I guess that we become quite insular, don't we? We only recognise or want to acknowledge what might be happening locally to us, because that's, you know, what's going to impact us the most right now.
Right. Well, Britain is a teeny bit behind on a number of levels, somewhat behind a number of infections as far as I know, but certainly has been behind until a few days ago, kind of a little similar to the US in terms of being willing to go out and be proactive about it. And that's been a mistake everywhere, really. Except the North Koreans are the shining light of the world, it seems like right now. So I think,
Korea, you mean?
sorry?
South Koreans.
The South Koreans, I'm sorry, did I say North Koreans? Oh,
Yes, you did.
they're not sure. Yeah, the North Koreans, well, they may have no COVID-19s, but they're not shining lights, I don't think. Maybe the people are, but the country is not. So, sorry. The South Koreans seem to have, at least at this point, we don't know, because we don't know what will happen in a few months. I'm always very skeptical with evaluating things too early. Because it's easy to say, look how wonderful this is, and then you go, well, yeah, how do we know? So I think, yeah, just keeping in touch with people and recognizing, I think what I'm seeing from England is that people are definitely, England hasn't really shut down fully.
No, it's not yet.
Yeah. And it's I'm a little bit outraged. I actually happen to have a connection to England ancestrally. I mean, I grew up in England, so it bothers me. I still have a lot of connection. And it's really difficult to see that people are, that, you know, and I know that, you know, the English do have we survived the Blitz, we can survive anything. You know, there is a strong sense of that, and politicians, of course, love to bring that up. They think it makes people feel good. I think that, you know, yeah, if you want, you can email me or through Facebook, whatever, and I will, there are resources that may be somewhat less available in the UK. I don't know enough about what is or isn't, but there's tons of resources going around that nobody really knows. But I think the main thing is to keep space to give ourselves space, and to hold space for other people at this point, while there's no clear medical, you know, we can suggest a lot of things. I will say something that's been very good for me personally is containing myself, not just in the house, but containing myself in terms of discipline and space. You know, I've basically decided I'm going on retreat. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, I'm not on retreat. I'm talking to you. You know, it's not like I don't, but I need, you know, I'm not going to be watching Netflix all day or going on YouTube and finding out the latest supposed information on it, which only pisses me off because some of it is I'm like, really? Are you kidding? Like, I'm not so sure that you know what you're talking about. I mean, I don't, you know, it just revs me up. So increasing my own personal practice, which in my case is meditation and is yoga as well. And I also offer, you know, something you can offer to patients maybe is do Zoom conferences just like this with patients for meditation, for support, for, you know, I think it's important to give ourselves some space within, because living with the, you know, sitting with the unknown, don't know mind is a very nice thing to say, but extremely difficult to implement. And like you're saying, you know, like Rachel, that every day or every whatever is different, and I can't anticipate what will happen, and to come to terms with even this planet will one day be gone. And we've known this, we've been talking about this, and it will be gone in the way we know it, but we'll also be gone because the sun one day will explode. Not in my lifetime in all likelihood, but this is the reality of all things. And now what a huge challenge to like take that theory that I know all stars collapse. period. And what happens when I'm part of that star and I'm exploding or collapsing or whatever, and to connect with more than just, I mean, I'm not saying that cures COVID-19 and it's beyond cure, but it's to be able to connect to more. I think is, you know, for all of us, how do I connect with more than just this very, very pressured situation, which makes me smaller and smaller. And how do I make myself more open, softer, and larger? And I think we all have to find it ourselves. But I think that's the greatest service that we could give to ourselves and to others in whatever manner we can. If you want, on my website, there is there's a little on the right up front, you can click on responding to COVID or Corona, whatever I called it. And I do Zoom calls every day, except Sunday. So if people want to participate in whatever things they want, they're perfectly welcome. You don't have to know me to come to these. I don't have agenda for most of them except this one. Well, it's not my agenda, but as Camille calls it, it's my show. Supposedly it's not my show. But and I offer meditation Tuesday evenings, which is too late for the Great Britain time. But if people want anything, just let me know. I'm here to offer what I can, however limited it might be or useless as it might be. And I do recognize that the need for neuroacupuncturists to feel like I'm of use and I have meaning, because it's your first years in practice are often the worst years in your life. You know, you go to school, you know exactly what you're doing. Everything is great. Well, it's not great, but it's, you know, you pass your exams, it's great. Let's put it that way. And then you take a licensing exam or not, depending on which country you're on. And then you're like on your own. Go start a clinic. Well, what the fuck do I do with that? You know, it's extremely difficult. So we work by ourselves. We don't have a lot of contact. We don't have social situations. Social distancing is a reality for us, except that we actually have to touch people with our hands. So it's we're in a difficult session. And so I just encourage you to take care of yourself, mentally, emotionally, whatever, spiritually, whatever the nice words are about it. And find space within yourself, and that space will translate in some manner to the space that you can offer to patients. Maybe right now we can't help patients physically. Certainly as acupuncturists, that's probably not appropriate right now, but we can help them emotionally, you know, to give them space in their minds over the phone or like this or whatever. That's a true service. At this point, that might be a greater service than any herb that we can offer. And I might be wrong. There may be herbs that can offer more. I don't want to pretend anything.
So can I add a couple of things?
Yes, please.
One is, you mentioned personal practice. I wanted to add in that I think Qigong is very important here. And it's something you can do for yourself, but it's also something you could advise your patients about. So Qigong, particularly for strengthening the lungs and most especially for strengthening the Wei Qi, I think is very, very important. And I know we're almost at the end of our time, so we can't,
No worries.
I don't want to go into too much there, but you know, that's something that we could discuss. And then, you know, the other thing I just wanted to mention is for those who are joining us for the first time, is today we talked about COVID, but you know, we've really used this as a forum to discuss cases and explore an incredible wealth of knowledge that Avi has. He is such an amazing acupuncturist. And so I hope that those of you who are new will join us again and maybe bring questions and case studies. And it's really been a lovely opportunity for discussion and learning. And that's how I'm seeing this time of sheltering in place, is that it's an incredible time of learning and creativity and personal development. So I hope you'll join us again.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Camille,
you.
if I may impose just for 1 second. Yeah, I mean, we are 1 minute to 11. It's not the end of the world if we go over time. You know, these are special days, and none of us have patients that we have to run to, although you may have other things you have to run to, and that's okay. Um, I'm gonna, you know, just to maybe to save you, what I would suggest is you can just very easily, you know, because not everybody has like Qigong practice or something. So I'll give you something very simple that might be useful, is just lifting your arms up on an in-breath and down on an out-breath, and kind of very slowly, and send your shoulder blades down. So don't just, so Teresa, don't just lift your arms up, okay? No. You know, lift your arms up by pressing your sit bone down, keeping your abdomen slightly tucked in, and send your shoulder blades down as you breathe in, and it's let the breath pull your arms up. So that it's as if you're moving through honey, and out. Good. See if you can straighten your elbows just to get a little bit more action in the in that rib cage. Send your rib cage, the back of the rib cage, down without arching the back, and 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 the other thing is, if you know what Ujjayi breath is, that's not a Qigong practice, I don't believe. Is constricting a little bit the throat, so making it's as if you put your nostrils in your throat and breathe, or at the top of the throat, and breathe. And there's a little sound that you hear in your ears. So I don't know if you can. Yeah. And just relax a little bit more. So I don't know if you can hear my breath. So that those are things that do activate the immune system and calm the mind. And Camille, did you have I just thought, you know, sometimes if I put people on the spot, it's not very nice. So I thought I'd share first that you can feel more comfortable sharing if you wanted to, but of course we can't see you.
Well, we do have a few exercises, but for those of you in the UK, it's 7 o'clock in the morning when I start this class. So I usually do this class while I'm still in bed. So I'm not going to turn the video on. But maybe next time I'll be prepared for that.
No, fair enough. Well, sometimes a description works. But no, it's okay. I didn't want to put you on the spot. I just
well, okay. So just as a very simple one, and I could do some more next time, but as a very simple one for the Wei Qi is just to consciously try to feel it, to try to feel the electromagnetic field that is around yourself. And try to consciously see if you can expand it and contract it. And one of the ways that we start to feel that electromagnetic field is usually actually with other people, where there's a certain point when you're not as close to someone, when you just sort of feel like, okay, that's the right distance, and I don't want to be any closer to them. That's your Wei Qi field. That's your protective field. So if you're doing it with yourself, one of the ways that you can try to do it is to bring your hands closer and further from each other, and try to feel at one point you feel some energy moving between them. And it takes a certain sensitivity. For some people it comes more easily than others, but try to feel that field. And then once you have a sense of it around your body, try to play with it, because you can, for example, if you want, you can expand it and make it wider, but then it usually tends to be thinner and dissipate. Whereas if you're in a crowded situation, you might want to bring it in closer to you, but then it's more thick and more dense and more protected. And if you can just start to learn and start to practice moving that energy, and getting some level of control over that energy. And then think about building it and nourishing it. And you can nourish it in many ways. For example, if you eat this amazing, wonderful, nourishing meal, go ahead and practice your qigong right after that, and think about the energy coming out of your kidneys and circulating into the wei qi. Of course, then you need to circulate it back in at the end and redeposit it back in the ming men. But just kind of get familiar with it so that you can start to exercise some level of consciousness and then control over it. And that's the start. And that's what I can say without turning on my video.
Well, it's quite a start, because it takes a lot. I think it takes a lot of practice, a lot of effort, without too much effort, but a lot of intention to do that, because it is,
right.
I believe it is primarily a mental activity that will translate into the body, as opposed to a body activity. So it requires some concentration and intention. So
Yes, and that's not normally where we would start, because that's very much a nei gong as opposed to a wei gong. Wei gong being external gong, and nei meaning internal gong. And this is definitely an internal exercise where you don't even need to be moving. But next time, if you want, we could do some moving ones.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else before we end? All right. Well, thank you all for coming, and I wish you an easy era. What else can we say? Just to be with each other, and even though we're ending the call, just to know that we are across the planet. We all exist together. So thank you. Enjoy.
All right.
Thank you, Abby.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.